Hello, my rubber hearts. This is the episode the whole series has been walking toward. Everything we've covered the rotor, shear zones, heat, fill factor, the loading sequence, the two-stage split all of it only matters because of one thing. It changes the final rubber part. The compound that comes out of the mixer becomes a seal, a tire thread, a hose, an engine mount. And how it was mixed has a profound influence on how well that thing eventually does its job. That sounds like an obvious statement, but it isn't. For a long time, the way people studied rubber processing treated the compound as a fixed input. You'd study extrusion or molding, curing, and simply assume the compound arriving at that machine was always the same. The mixing had already happened, it was someone else's job. But the compound isn't a constant, it's the output of a process with many variables, and every one of those variables changes the material in some way. So, when a finished part doesn't perform as expected, the real cause may have been created long before it reached the mold or the extruder. It might have started with a decision made back in the mixing room. That's the connection we are going to explore today. Measured relationship. So let's start with silica, because silica is where the connection between mixing and a finished part is at its sharpest and where the stakes are the highest. Modern fuel-saving tire threads are built on silica. And the whole reason the industry fought through the difficulty of mixing it is a set of properties carbon black cannot match: lower rolling resistance and better wet grip at the same time. But silica only delivers that if it's mixed right. And there are published results that show directly how a mixing decision reaches all the way to the tire. Take the discharge temperature. A pure mixing room decision, one lever the operator controls. In a study on silica-filled natural rubber, raising the dome temperature drove the silanization reaction closer to completion, which is exactly what the compound needs: the silane bonding properly to the silica surface. But push that temperature too high and the natural rubber itself begins to degrade. So a single number set at a mixer sits between two outcomes: too low and the coupling reaction never finishes; too high and you damage the polymer. The tire inherits whichever way it went. That is not allowed curiosity. It's the silanization window we talked about back in the reactor episode. And here it is deciding the quality of a real product. The chain is already visible. The mixing sets the temperature. The temperature sets silanization and the state of the polymer. And the tire carries both. Now the sharper version, because there is a clean line running from how well the silica was mixed all the way to how the tire performs on the road. The state of silica dispersion shows up in a measurement we've met before: the Payne effect, the collapse of stiffness under increasing strain that reflects the filler network. A higher Payne effect means the silica is more poorly dispersed, and across the literature, the dispersion state maps onto the two numbers a modern thread lives and dies by: the loss factor at low temperature, which predicts the wet grip, and the loss factor at high temperature, which predicts rolling resistance and fuel economy. So follow it end to end. How thoroughly the mixer broke down and coupled the silica determines the Payne effect. The Payne effect tracks the tire's grip in the wet and its fuel consumption on the motorway, the two headline properties of the whole silica thread. The entire reason the industry took on the harder filler are set in large part inside the mixing chamber. Now, let's move to something you can actually see: surface finish. Anyone who's worked with injection molding has seen flow marks, those faint lines or patterns that appear when the rubber doesn't fill the cavity smoothly. Several things drive them, but one of the levers is the compound's viscosity. And a compound that comes to the mold stiffer than it should be feels less cleanly and shows more of them. That viscosity is not something the molding machine created. It's something the compound arrived with, set by how much work went into during mixing. So again, the chain points upstream. The molding machine didn't create the viscosity, it inherited it. Extrusion tells the same story, and often the most visibly, because the surface of what comes out of the die is a direct report on how the compound was made. The rule of thumb across the industry is blunt. When an extruded profile comes out with a rough surface, sharkskin, or inconsistent die swell, the cause is far more often in the compound than in the extruder. And within the compound, pore filler dispersion is one of the most common culprits and one of the hardest to catch before it reaches the die. Here is the part that matters. When dispersion is the problem, the fix isn't at the extruder. It's back at the mixer. Rotor speed, fill factor, dab criteria, the amount of work in the compound received. Reaching for the extruder's temperature or speed to paper over a badly mixed compound doesn't solve it. It just chases the symptom. The dispersion was set upstream, and that's where it has to be corrected. So, a poor extruded surface is very often a mixing result wearing a disguise. The extruder is shaping the compound it was handed, and the quality of that surface was largely decided before the compound ever reached it. If we step back, every one of those examples follows the exact same pattern. A decision during mixing changes the compound. The change alters a measurable compound properties such as dispersion, viscosity, modulus, or the extent of mastication. Those compound properties then influence something the customer actually cares about, whether that is surface finish, dimensional stability, rolling resistance, wet grip, or extrusion quality. Mixing changes the compound changes the part. It really is that simple. And that brings us back to something we've mentioned before. Poor dispersive mixing generally cannot be fully recovered by downstream operations such as extrusion or calendaring. Those processes can reshape the compound, but they cannot undo agglomerates that should have been broken apart in the mixer. If excessive elastic recovery was created during the mixing, the extruder inherits it. If the viscosity leaving the mixer is too high, the molding process inherits it. The downstream machines are working with the compound they receive, not the compound we wish we had made. There's one more link in this chain that's worth mentioning because it's often overlooked. When the batch leaves the internal mixer, it usually passes across a two-roll mill before moving on to the next stage. Many people think of that mill as nothing more than a place to sheet out and cool the rubber. It certainly does those jobs, but it can also influence the compound itself. Passing the rubber repeatedly through the nip improves sheet uniformity, helps equalize temperature across the batch, and provides additional mechanical working. In some formulations, it can also influence the orientation of fibers or other elongated ingredients. It isn't another dispersive mixing stage, and it can't rescue a poorly mixed batch, but neither is it simply passive handling. Even after the compound leaves the mixer, processing continues to shape the material. So here's the takeaway, not just for today's episode, but for the entire series. When a rubber part fails, when the hardness is wrong, the stiffness is off, the surface finish is poor, or the profile won't hold its shape, our first instinct is usually to blame the machine that made the part. Sometimes that's exactly where the problem is, but just as often, the real cause is much further upstream. It began with a mixing decision because the performance of the finished part is built into the compound and the compound is built in the mixer. Next time, we'll become even more practical. We will look at the most common mixing defects, what they look like, why they happen, and what they tell us about what went wrong inside the mixer. Until then, stay elastic and stay curious.